Wordless 22. Immaculate. Spotless, flawless, absolutely clean. Ken and Jessica were wonderful tenants and left the apartment in immaculate condition when they moved out. Imminent. Near at hand, impending. Rosa was such a last-minute worker that she could never start writing a paper till the deadline was imminent. Immobility. State of being immovable. Modern armies cannot afford the luxury of immobility, as they are vulnerable to attack while standing still. Immune. Resistant to, free or exempt from. Fortunately, Florence had contracted chickenpox as a child and was immune to it when her baby broke out in spots. Immutable. Unchangeable. All things change over time, nothing is immutable. Impair. Injure, hurt. Drinking alcohol can impair your ability to drive safely. If you're going to drink, don't drive. Impale. Pierce. He was impaled by the spear hurled by his adversary. Impalpable. Imperceptible, intangible. The ash is so fine that it is impalpable to the touch, but it can be seen as a fine layer covering the window ledge. Impart. Reveal or tell, grant. Polly begged Grandma to impart her recipe for Ugela, but her grandmother wouldn't say a word. Impartial. Not biased, fair. Knowing she could not be impartial about her own child, Jo refused to judge any match in which Billy was competing. Impassable. Not able to be traveled or crossed. A giant redwood had fallen across the highway, blocking all 4 lanes. The road was impassable. Impasse. Predicament from which there is no escape, deadlock. In this impasse, all turn to prayer as their last hope. Impassive. Without feeling, imperturbable, stoical. Refusing to let the enemy see how deeply shaken he was by his capture, the prisoner kept his face impassive. Impeach. Charge with crime in office, indict. The angry congressman wanted to impeach the president for his misdeeds. Impeccable. Faultless. The uncrowned queen of the fashion industry, Diana was acclaimed for her impeccable taste. Impecunious. Without money. Though Scrooge claimed he was too impecunious to give alms, he easily could have afforded to be charitable. Impede. Hinder, block, delay. A series of accidents impeded the launching of the space shuttle. Impediment. Hindrance, stumbling block. She had a speech impediment that prevented her speaking clearly. Impel. Drive or force onward. A strong feeling of urgency impelled her. If she failed to finish the project right then, she knew that she would never get it done. Impenetrable. Not able to be pierced or entered, beyond understanding. How could the murderer have gotten into the locked room? To Watson, the mystery, like the room, was impenetrable. Impending. Nearing, approaching. The entire country was saddened by the news of his impending death. Impenitent. Not repentant. We could see from his tough guy attitude that he was impenitent. Imperative. Absolutely necessary, critically important. It is imperative that you be extremely agreeable to Great Aunt Maud when she comes to tea, otherwise she might not leave you that $1 million in her will. Imperceptible. Unnoticeable, undetectable. Fortunately, the stain on the blouse was imperceptible after the blouse had gone through the Washington. Imperial. Like an emperor, related to an empire. When hotel owner Leona Helmsley appeared in ads as Queen Leona standing guard over the Palace Hotel, her critics mocked her imperial fancies. Imperious. Domineering, haughty. Jane rather liked a man to be masterful, but Mr. Rochester seemed so bent on getting his own way that he was actually imperious. Impermeable. Impervious, not permitting passage through its substance. This new material is impermeable to liquids. Impertinent. Insolent, rude. His neighbor's impertinent curiosity about his lack of dates angered Ted. It was downright rude of them to ask him such personal questions. Imperturbable. Calm, placid, composed. In the midst of the battle, the Duke of Wellington remained imperturbable and in full command of the situation despite the hysteria and panic all around him. Impervious. Impenetrable, incapable of being damaged or distressed. The carpet salesman told Simone that his most expensive brand of floor covering was warranted to be impervious to ordinary wear and tear. Having read so many negative reviews of his acting, the movie star had learned to ignore them, and was now impervious to criticism. Impetuous. Violent, hasty, rash. Leap before you look was the motto suggested by one particularly impetuous young man. Impetus. Incentive, stimulus, moving force. A new federal highway program would create jobs and give added impetus to our economic recovery. Impiety. Irreverence, lack of respect for God. When members of the youth group draped the church in toilet paper one Halloween, the minister reprimanded them for their impiety. Impinge. Infringe, touch, collide, fault with. How could they be married without impinging on one another's freedom? Impious. Irreverent. The congregation was offended by her impious remarks. Implacable. Incapable of being pacified. Madame Defarge was the implacable enemy of the Everman family. Implausible. Unlikely, unbelievable. Though her alibi seemed implausible, it in fact turned out to be true. Implement. Put into effect, supply with tools. The mayor was unwilling to implement the plan until she was sure it had the governor's backing. Implicate. Incriminate, show to be involved. Here's the deal, if you agree to take the witness stand and implicate your partners in crime, the prosecution will recommend that the judge go easy in sentencing you. Implication. Something hinted at or suggested. When Miss Watson said she hadn't seen her purse since the last time Jim was in the house, the implication was that she suspected Jim had taken it. Implicit. Understood but not stated. Jack never told Jill he adored her, He believed his love was implicit in his actions. Implore. Beg. He implored her to give him a second chance. Imply. Suggest a meaning not expressed, signify. When Aunt Millie said, "My, that's a big piece of pie, young man," was she implying that Bobby was being a glutton in helping himself to such a huge piece? Importunate. Urging, demanding. He tried to hide from his importunate creditors until his allowance arrived. Importune. Beg persistently. Democratic and Republican phone solicitors importuned her for contributions so frequently that she decided to give nothing to either party. Imposter. Someone who assumes a false identity. Holmes exposed the doctor as an imposter. Impotent. Weak, ineffective. Although he wished to break the nicotine habit, he found himself impotent on resisting the craving for a cigarette. Impoverished. Poor. The loss of their farm left the family impoverished and without hope. Impregnable. Invulnerable. Until the development of the airplane as a military weapon, the fort was considered impregnable. Impromptu. Without previous preparation, off the cuff, on the spur of the moment. The judges were amazed that she could make such a thorough, well-supported presentation in an impromptu speech. Impropriety. Improperness, unsuitableness. Because of the impropriety of the punk rockers' t-shirt and jeans, the management refused to admit him to the hotel's very formal dining room. Improvident. Thriftless. He was constantly being warned to mend his improvident ways and begin to save for a rainy day. Improvidence. Improvise. Compose on the spur of the moment. She would sit at the piano and improvise for hours on themes from Bach and Handel. Imprudent. Lacking caution, injudicious. It is imprudent to exercise vigorously and become overheated when you are unwell. Impudence. Impertinence, insolence. Kissed on the cheek by a perfect stranger, Lady Catherine exclaimed, "Of all the nerve! Young man, I should have you horsewhipped for your impudence." Impugn. Dispute or contradict, often in an insulting way, challenge, gainsay. Our treasurer was furious when the finance committee's report impugned the accuracy of his financial records and recommended that he should take bonehead math. Impunity. Freedom from punishment or harm. A pound weakling can't attack a beachfront bully with impunity. The poor, puny guy is sure to get mashed. Inadvertently. Unintentionally, by oversight, carelessly. Judy's great fear was that she might inadvertently omit a question on the exam and mismark her whole answer sheet. Inalienable. Not to be taken away, non-transferable. The Declaration of Independence mentions the inalienable rights that all of us possess. Inane. Silly, senseless. There's no point to what you're saying. Why are you bothering to make such inane remarks? Inanimate. Lifeless. She was asked to identify the still and inanimate body. Inarticulate. speechless, producing indistinct speech. He became inarticulate with rage and uttered sounds without meaning. Inaugurate. Start, initiate, install in office. The airline decided to inaugurate its new route to the Far East with a special reduced fare offer. Incandescent. Strikingly bright, shining with intense heat. If you leave on an incandescent light bulb, it quickly grows too hot to touch. Incantation. Singing or chanting of magic spells, magical formula. Uttering incantations to make the brew more potent, the witch doctor stirred the liquid in the cauldron. Incapacitate. Disable. During the winter, many people were incapacitated by respiratory ailments. Incarcerate. Imprison. The civil rights workers were willing to be arrested and even incarcerated if by their imprisonment they could serve the cause. Incarnation. Act of assuming a human body and human nature. The incarnation of Jesus Christ is a basic tenet of Christian theology. Incendiary. Arsonist. The fire spread in such an unusual manner that the fire department chiefs were certain that it had been set by an incendiary. Incense. Enrage, infuriate. Cruelty to defenseless animals incensed Kit, the very idea brought tears of anger to her eyes. Incentive. Spur, motive. Mike's strong desire to outshine his big sister was all the incentive he needed to do well in school. Inception. Start, beginning. She was involved with the project from its inception. Incessant. Uninterrupted, unceasing. In a famous TV commercial, the frog's incessant croaking goes on and on until eventually it turns into a single word, "But why, sir?"